Hallo und willkommen an Tag 8 im Forum Alpbach. Mein Name ist Eva Winreuter und in dieser Folge sind meine Kollegin Anna Wallner und ich ganz in das neue Alpbach-Format eingetaucht. In die Lab Week.
Presse Play. Was in Alpbach wichtig wird.
Ich erkenne meinen Alpbach nicht wieder. Wir probieren neu etwas aus.
Der Presse-Podcast aus Alpbach wird unterstützt von der Erste Group.
Das Forum ist seit Sonntag also in der Lab Week angekommen. Ein neues Format, bei dem die Teilnehmer an mehreren aufeinanderfolgenden Tagen Konzepte und Lösungen zu wichtigen Fragen der Gegenwart erarbeiten sollen. Es ist eine der großen Änderungen unter der neuen Präsidentschaft von Andreas Streichel. In Futures of Security and Technology sollten die Teilnehmerinnen etwa den Alltag eines 20-Jährigen in der Zukunft beschreiben. Wie sich das die heute 25- bis 30-Jährigen vorstellen, das hören Sie am besten gleich selbst.
This is a less than 20 years old person. What are the chances they will have an advancedly technological car?
20-year-olds won't have cars.
If you're, that it could be a bike. Yes, bikes on bike ban. I'm gonna call it bike ban, like the autobahn. And work has facial recognition. You don't need a badge anymore, which you can forget home. So maybe they're annoyed that they have to go in the old way into the office. Like they have to deal with a security guard, and what even is that? Yeah. You know, like
I had to take out my eyes.
Yeah, like for us when we have to deal with a boomer. Like, oh, really?
No, well, at that point, I had to deal with an old millennial. I thought. In 2042, millennials will be like 50, 55.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest jobs will be like marketing and communications. I think that's the one thing that won't be taken over by robots.
What's different in the future?
I don't think anything will be that different.
I think maybe
He's a trainee.
Yeah.
That finally gets paid. He's a paid intern.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the future, internships are paid.
Naja, vielleicht haben die StipendiatInnen ja recht und in 20 Jahren werden Praktika wirklich immer bezahlt. Doch nicht nur die StipendiatInnen, sondern auch Wirtschaftsexperten wie der ehemalige Gouverneur der österreichischen Nationalbank, Ewald Nowotny, nehmen an der Lab Week teil. Nowotny war das erste Mal 1968 in Alpbach und kommt heute fast jedes Jahr. Heuer befasst er sich in einem Retreat mit Financial Literacy. Wie findet er das neue Alpbach-Konzept?
Spüren Sie heuer eine Veränderung?
Eindeutig. Es ist viel jünger. In einem gewissen Sinn auch viel lustiger vielleicht geworden und auch viel interaktiver. Also nicht sozusagen die großen Vorträge, sondern wirklich Gespräche. Also eigentlich, ich bin ja schon wirklich einer der älteren Teilnehmer, aber es ist in einem gewissen Sinn verjüngend.
Und Sie sind ja auch Teil eines Retreat oder Workshops, der mehrere Tage dauert, zu Financial Literacy. Was haben Sie da bis jetzt mitgenommen? Wie ist das?
Es ist Workshop-Atmosphäre und was schon wirklich gut gelungen ist, es ist eine große Vielzahl von Teilnehmern aus ganz unterschiedlichen Voraussetzungen. Also eben, wie gesagt, vom Investmentbanker bis zur Umweltaktivistin und in einem quasi kultivierten, ruhigen Gespräch, was man sonst nicht so leicht erreicht. Also ich halte das für sehr gelungen und war auch sehr beeindruckt.
Jetzt gibt es aber auch Kritik, wie immer in Österreich vor allem von größeren Unternehmen, von Menschen, die nach Alpbach immer wieder kommen. Denen gefällt das heuer nicht so gut, weil sie sagen, es ist vielleicht ein bisschen eben jünger, die Stipendiaten nehmen viel Raum ein, hören wir auch gerade im Hintergrund. Und es ist sozusagen nicht mehr so, wie es immer war, in diesen abgeschlossenen Silo-Gesprächen. Man kommt irgendwie nicht mehr so dazu, dass man so viel Unternehmer trifft und ich weiß nicht. Was sagen Sie, wenn Sie sowas hören?
Naja, das ist, glaube ich, richtig, nicht? Also es war früher natürlich Alpbach zum Teil wirklich so ein Networking-Sache, wo sich im Prinzip die Leute, die sich in Wien ohnehin gesehen haben, noch einmal gesehen haben, aber halt vielleicht in der entspannteren Atmosphäre Dinge besprechen konnten, die sonst nicht so besprechbar sind. Das dürfte jetzt nicht so sein. Also, wobei es so ist, ich kann das nicht so ganz exakt beurteilen, weil die Finanzgespräche, also das ist das, was ich natürlich am nächsten beurteilen kann, sind ja eigentlich erst jetzt in dieser Woche. Also da kann schon wieder vielleicht einiges an Networking zustande kommen. Mein jetziger Eindruck ist wirklich jünger und eigentlich auch interessanter.
Ja, ich glaube, Networking findet schon noch statt, aber vielleicht auf andere Art und Weise und nicht mehr so in vorgegebenen Bahnen wie früher. Haben Sie ein Highlight, auf das Sie sich noch freuen in den kommenden Tagen?
Naja, wie gesagt, ich bin ja bei diesem Retreat über Financial Literacy, also Finanzbildung. Und da haben wir ja erst heute den ersten Tag gehabt. Und da bin ich schon gespannt, wie das dann weitergeht. Es hat ja der sozusagen Treichel als sozusagen Geist über diesen Dingen ein bisschen eine Richtung vorgegeben mit stärkerer europäischer Kapitalmarkt. Mein Gefühl nach dem heutigen Tag ist, dass das nicht so ganz einfach läuft. Und das finde ich interessant, dass man nicht sozusagen quasi zu vorgegebenen...
Was meinen Sie damit jetzt genau, dass es nicht so einfach läuft?
Dass sozusagen am Ende das Ganze rauskommt mit der Forderung, wir brauchen einen europäischen Kapitalmarkt. Den brauchen wir sowieso, also das ist gar kein Zweifel. Aber die Frage, in welcher Form und in welcher Weise, da kann ich mir vorstellen, dass es da schon noch einige ganz interessante Diskussionen gibt.
Und nach all den Konzepten, die hier entworfen werden, fragt sich natürlich jeder, wie ist es eigentlich den Menschen gegangen, die im Vorjahr hier waren und zum Beispiel am Klimaretreat teilgenommen haben? Hat das irgendetwas gebracht? Das habe ich Gonzalo Muñoz gefragt. Er ist einer der Großen im Bereich Umweltschutz und war zwischen 2019 und 2021 einer der 2 Klimachampions der UN-Klimakonferenz. Er versucht mit unzähligen Projekten wie Race to Zero Unternehmen weltweit beizubringen, ihr Verhalten zugunsten des Klimas zu ändern.
Well, definitely. Thank you, Eva. It's great to be back in Alpbach because last year, the results of the European Alpbach Forum in terms of climate was extremely relevant when we were preparing our way towards COP26 in Glasgow, and we were putting together a lot of very concrete efforts in terms of commitments. Right now, probably last year, and COP26 was well renowned as the level of commitment to achieve net zero emissions no longer than 2050. And in that sense, the people that gathered last year here in Alpbach was absolutely instrumental to achieve part of those commitments and to move that energy forward, coming from a forum that is so important not only for Europe but also for the whole world. Europe is sometimes the seed of many initiatives and many technologies and much more of the culture that then you see spread all around the world.
Okay, and why did you come back then this year?
Well, probably because of the same, because I understand that this forum, having happened since 1945, is so important to understand what more can Europe bring to the whole world. Not only how Europe can go through the own challenges that we're facing in this part of the world, but how much of what is happening here, what can happen here, can therefore inspire the whole world.
Could you give me some a bit concrete examples? What will be Europe's kind of leading role when it comes to climate saving the climate?
Well, probably this year we're seeing the consequences of the addiction that we have on fossil fuels. And that addiction is not only taking us to the dramatic consequences when it comes to the environment and the climate, but also to war and blood. And therefore, Europe must lead the way to free the world from the addiction to fossil fuels, and therefore through Repower Europe, through the way we can accelerate and scale the right type of technologies, create the conditions for many other countries to do the same when it comes to the way they obtain and they use their energy.
We always talk of Europe, of the continent, but Europe consists of all the Europeans. And when it comes to climate change, I think a lot of people have the feeling that their actions, like in their private actions, will not have any effect on climate change because what can one person do? It will not be changed by recycling waste. What is your opinion on that?
That every action counts, that at the end, the big change happens with the addition of several actions that sometimes is related to the individual and many times is related to the organizations. But on the other side, many organizations and policymakers will expect the citizens to express themselves in order for them to take the decision. So if we don't count on the individual, we will never reach the changes that we require. So it's a misunderstanding of the problem while not counting on the individual. You don't have to consider not only the amount of the effect, the positive effect that you're doing while doing anything, whether it's recycling or whether it's walking instead of taking your car or cycling or using the public transport system, or just staying sometimes if you can in your country instead of traveling, or of course changing the way you feed yourself. I mean, imagine how much the world has changed when it comes to food, just considering veganism. And veganism is an individual choice. It's not that the big multinationals decided that people should start eating vegan. It's not that the government said that we have to move our policies towards veganism. It's that individual choices start adding towards what is now the fastest ever change on consumption or nutrition habit in human history. So same thing happens with biking all around the world. Or same thing happens when it comes to even certain places, the capacity of producing your own electricity. All of those changes at the end, when added, really generate the changes, but mostly also influence at a political level and also a business level, at a financial level, decisions of people that then can massify that impact.
But how do you unite people? You know, if we talk about veganism, it's one thing. But when it comes to climate change, it's like sometimes I think people, or at least I feel a bit lost, you know. Is it really like the most thing that has leverage? Is it recycling? Is it not having a car? Is it not flying? Sometimes I don't know what I should focus on.
You have to focus on everything. At the end, unfortunately, we're in the era of consequences. We don't have time to define the unique thing, the silver bullet that will take us through this crisis. This crisis is already massive. This crisis is a fundamental one, it's an existential one that will require all of us and will require all of the efforts. So unfortunately, we cannot work through or go through this crisis in our comfort zone. We have to do every single effort. Everyone needs to do every single effort. And maybe, unfortunately, the only thing that will move us all will be related to the level of catastrophes that we're seeing, even in regions like Europe, with the levels of heat waves and the drought and consequences and the fires that we have never thought will come to this continent. Okay, if that's the only way that we will learn, maybe let it be. I don't know. I think that we have enough tools in our hands as humanity to go through this crisis, not only when it comes to the technology that will move us forward, but also the solidarity. We have to understand that in this moment, half of the people in the world, or more than that, more than 4,000 million people are suffering the worst consequences of the crisis. If anyone listening to the podcast has been suffering high levels of heat or have seen the consequences of the drought and is freaking out, okay, imagine that happening on a daily basis. Imagine it happening without having the resources to even survive to that consequences. So that's where we are now. This is not a joke. This is not something that will pass by. This is not something that is irrelevant. This is something that is absolutely urgent and will require all of us. And if the only way that we all combine our efforts and coordinate will be through feeling the consequences firsthand in our own bodies, well, maybe that's the only thing that we can learn.
Do you sometimes have the feeling that people only will learn when it really comes to catastrophe, that before that they just won't see the need, the urge of it?
I think so. I think so that we are seeing that very dramatically. The amount of information and evidence that we have had for decades, it's immense. And we have done a lot of effort to deny it, to block it, to think that this will get solved by its own, or that this is not that urgent and not that important. Whereas when it comes to, for example, the COVID crisis, we saw people mobilizing all around the world and coordinating efforts because they were feeling the catastrophe in their own bodies, in their own families. So that's probably the best way to compare how we have the capacity of reacting, how easily, let's say, and how fast we can coordinate around science and we can coordinate around global efforts to solve a problem that is affecting everyone. And on the other side, we have, again, the all level of tools that we require, but we're not just feeling the sense of urgency. And probably it is requiring some more effects in ourselves in order to coordinate.
One of your big projects is to convince companies to engage themselves in climate change. Yet companies love to do greenwashing, like a lot of marketing, and then it's like, oh, we are so green. And if you look at the figures, it's like nothing. Because their argument is like, if they would really change their behavior, it would be an amount loss of money. So how do you convince them?
Well, of course, as you said, we will have, and we still have a lot of companies saying that they would like to do something and they're not necessarily moving in the right direction, what you call as greenwashing or moral washing. We have seen that for a while. On one side, I like when all companies, all big companies are already speaking about this, and they're exposing themselves, right? That's important by its own because that allows us to start asking for concrete action. Then some of those companies are already moving because they understand that this is a moral duty. Probably very few. Very few companies will move because of that. And us as citizens would expect that companies, people, governments will move because of the moral duty. Let's put that aside. Some people, some governments, some businesses will move because of the moral duty. Many of them will move when it comes to their own business. So we're seeing some companies that are already moving because they are seeing that the right businesses are over there. Some of them are saying it's much more expensive not to move. The cost of inaction is much higher than the cost of action. When it comes, for example, to electricity, green electricity is now cheaper in many more countries in the world than oil and gas. And then on the other side, we're seeing from one side how the financial sector is already pushing a lot. Businesses all around the world saying it's too risky to maintain our money, to maintain our financial assets in a company that is based on fossil fuel or is based on something that is destroying the environment, or like deforestation or depletion of the ocean, than a company that is really working on a sustainable model that is even restoring nature. Of course, financially, that makes much more sense to be in one that can be sustainable in the future. But then the other element is talent. Many more people are joining the workforce with an expectation that they will put their talent in an organization that is aligned with their values. So for any of the reasons, whether it's because you have the morality to move towards that direction, or it's just for your own interest, honestly, I don't care. At the end, we need them to move. We need them to do the right thing. And then it comes to the point where you're saying, okay, if those companies are really committing vocally and they are saying what they want to do, and we have all of these capacities of checking how much of what they're saying is what they're doing, then we can help them align with the right type of action, whatever is their incentive that they have to do so.
Seems like if you give companies a solid business case, then it's much easier.
Absolutely. And that's true. That might not be what many of us would like it to be, but if we expect a humankind to evolve in that right direction, it might take us too many generations and we don't have enough time, unfortunately.
Ja, es sind große Dinge, die hier in Alpbach besprochen werden. Am Sonntag war übrigens auch ein Vertreter der EU-Spitze zu Gast, Josep Borrell Fontelles. Er ist so etwas wie der EU-Außenminister und Vizepräsident der EU-Kommission. Er sprach in einem Panel über die großen Krisen, mit denen die Europäische Union zu kämpfen hat. Eine Zahl ist mir dabei besonders in Erinnerung geblieben. Die Bevölkerung der EU macht derzeit rund 5% der Weltbevölkerung aus. Nach Ende des Zweiten Weltkriegs waren es aber noch 20%. Die EU muss daher strategische Partner in der Welt finden, sagt Borrell Fontelles. Anders geht es nicht.
So one important part for a policy is to build partnerships, is to build alliances, to be aware of how small you are, how powerless you are, and if you don't want to be, someone said that during the lunch today, the global strategic minority. We don't want to be the global strategic minority. We want to be global strategic, but not the minority. If we don't want to be the minority, very clever, very global, very strategic, but minority, we have to be partners. And you have to build partnerships sometimes with people that are not exactly the one that you would love. And this is another thing that you have to learn. In international politics, you have to talk with a lot of people that you wouldn't like to go to have dinner with them.
Der Auftritt von Borrell Fontelles war für viele eine große Sache. Nach dem Panel ist etwa eine Frau in einem bunten afghanischen Kleid auf ihn zugegangen. Die Menschenrechtsaktivistin Nargis Hassansai. Sie war lange Zeit Journalistin in Afghanistan und zuletzt an der Uni in Kabul tätig. Sie bat den EU-Vertreter eindringlich, nicht auf Afghanistan zu vergessen. Vor allem jetzt nicht, wenn die ganze Welt auf die Ukraine blickt. Denn dass Afghanistan vergessen wird, ist das, was sie befürchtet.
I just saw you talking very intensely to the Vice President of the European Commission. What were you asking him?
To remembering Afghanistan and to not forgetting Afghanistan. You know, and a condition that, to tell you the truth, that world is really forgetting Afghanistan. And I was just pardoning him that in 21st century, girls in our country are banned from school, from their very, very basic right. So what is the world thinking about this, and what is the world doing for this? Half of the generation of Afghanistan, half of the generation in Afghanistan, female and girls, they are all only waiting at home and staying at home and being just like a woman of somehow 13, 14 and 50th century, not going to school, not going to having education, not job, not freedom. The most important point is freedom. And the woman who is now living there, at least they cannot go 45 or 50 kilometers farther from their own house. So just you just imagine this and your own thoughts that how would be the life now in Afghanistan for women and girls now. When you cannot leave your house alone, you always should have your brother, your father and or your husband. Otherwise, you have to stay at home.
Und damit verabschieden wir uns. Zweimal können Sie uns noch im Alpbach-Podcast hören. Dann fahren auch wir heim. Wenn Sie übrigens noch Geschichten haben, die wir unbedingt erzählen sollten, dann schreiben Sie uns doch unter podcast@diepresse.com. Ich sage Tschüss, ich hoffe, Sie haben einen schönen Tag in Alpbach und bis morgen.
Was in Alpbach wichtig wird.